Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live readings, daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And tonight we start on the 24th chapter of the third canto. We start with text 41. And what's happening is, well, wait, that noise that you're hearing in the background was heating up the water because it's getting cold here and we need to drink warm water. So just give me a second. I think that's enough. Yeah, that's enough. What's happening is, Kardama Muni, after Kapila was born, he spoke, he made prayers to his son, the Supreme Lord. And now Kardama Muni is going to leave for the forest. And during our last reading we heard how, even though that seems strange, that the Supreme Lord has come to be his son and live in his house, and then he's going to go to the forest. And that, everybody kind of laughed when they heard that. But then his explanation was given that because that's the rule, and that was his promise. And that was the sanction. It's all being sanctioned by Kapila Dev. And now Kapila Dev is going to enlighten his mother, Devahuti. So that's where we are. Text 41. So fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. Sri Maitreya said, thus, when Kardama Muni, the progenitor of human society, was spoken to in fullness by his son, Kapila, he circumambulated him, and with a good, pacified mind, he at once left for the forest. So, see, Kardama Muni first made prayers to the Lord, and the Lord explained, after Kardama Muni asked permission to go, he understood, and he gave him permission and blessings, because it is ordained by the Shastra. So in other words, rules are not hard and fast. They are dependent on the situation. Purport. Going to the forest is compulsory for everyone. It is not a mental excursion upon which one person goes and another does not. Everyone should go to the forest, at least as Ivanaprastha. Forest going means to take 100% shelter of the Supreme Lord, as explained by Prahlad Maharaj in his talks with his father. Sada samudvignadhyam. People who have accepted a temporary material body are always full of anxieties. One should not, therefore, be very much affected by this material body, but should try to be freed. The preliminary process to become freed is to go to the forest, or to give up family relationships and exclusively engage in Krishna consciousness. That is the purpose of going to the forest. Otherwise, the forest is only a place of monkeys and wild animals. To go to the forest does not mean to become a monkey or a ferocious animal. It means to accept exclusively the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage oneself in full service. One does not actually have to go to the forest. At the present moment, this is not at all advisable for a man who has spent his life all along in big cities. Haribol? Glory to Prabhupada. Anandarupa, I'm right in the middle of a reading. But I'll be there tomorrow. I'm leaving here at 10 and I'll be there by same time as normal.
Okay.
All right? But I'm right in the middle of the reading and we're on live camera.
I can understand.
All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Looking forward. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. So this is so wonderful how Prabhupada is saying everybody has to go to the forest. And then halfway through the paragraph, one does not actually have to go to the forest. And therefore, if you don't have Prabhupada's purports, how could you understand these verses? How could you actually understand the Srimad-Bhagavatam, especially in this age where we are under the circumstances, without Prabhupada's purports? So Prabhupada says, one does not actually have to go to the forest. At the present moment, this is not at all advisable for a man who has spent his life all along in big cities. As explained by Prahlad Maharaj, Hitvatmapatam Griham Andakupam. One should not remain always engaged in the responsibilities of family life, because family life without Krishna consciousness is just like a blind well. Alone in a field, if one falls into a blind well and no one is there to save him, he may cry for years and no one will hear or see where the crying is coming from. Death is sure. Similarly, those who are forgetful of their eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord and are in the blind well of family life, their position is very ominous. Prahlad Maharaj advised that one should give up this well somehow or other and take to Krishna consciousness and thus be freed from material entanglement, which is full of anxieties. Text 42. The sage Kardama accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and take shelter of Him exclusively. Without association, he traveled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi, devoid of any relationship with fire or shelter. Purport. Here the words anagnir, aniketana are very significant. A sannyasi should be completely detached from fire and any residential quarters. A grahasta has a relationship with fire, either for offering sacrifices or for cooking. But a sannyasi is freed from these two responsibilities. He does not have to cook or offer fire for sacrifice, because he is always engaged in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he has already accomplished all ritualistic performances of religion. Aniketana means without lodging. He should not have his own house, but should depend completely on the Supreme Lord for his food and lodging. He should travel. Mauna means silence. Unless one becomes silent, he cannot think completely about the pastimes and activities of the Lord. It is not that because one is a fool and cannot speak nicely, he therefore takes the vow of Mona. Rather, one becomes silent so that people will not disturb him. It is said by Chanakya Pandit that a rascal appears very intelligent as long as he does not speak. But speaking is the test. The so-called silence of a silent impersonalist Swami indicates that he has nothing to say. He simply wants to beg. But the silence adopted by Kardama Muni was not like that. He became silent for relief from nonsensical talk. One is called a Muni when he remains grave and does not talk nonsense. Maharaj Ambarish set a very good example. Whenever he spoke about the pastimes of the Lord. Mauna necessitates refraining from nonsensical talking and engaging in the talking facility in the pastimes of the Lord. In that way one can chant and hear about the Lord in order to perfect his life. Vritam means that one should take a vow, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, amanitvam, adambitvam, without hankering for personal respect and without being proud of one's material position. Ahimsa means not being violent. There are 18 processes for attaining knowledge and perfection, and by his vow, Kardama Muni adopted all the principles of self-realization. So that verse, that quote from Bhagavad Gita is referring to the 13th chapter, verses 8 to 12, in which the list of what is knowledge is given. And these two words, amanitvam, adambitvam, the first one means humility, and the second one means pridelessness. And then the next one is ahimsa, So, in that purport of that verse, Srila Prabhupada says that knowledge begins with humility. So there's a reason for that word, namanitvam, adambitvam, being at the head of those 18 items that constitute knowledge, according to Krishna, the supreme authority. So therefore, even if a devotee becomes high in terms of respectability, and even in terms of service, in elevated service, he must remain humble, cannot be proud of his position. Text 43. Translation. He fixed his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman, who is beyond cause and effect, who manifests the three modes of material nature, who is beyond those three modes, and who is perceived only through unfailing devotional service. Purport. Whenever there is bhakti, there must be three things present: the devotee, the devotion, and the Lord. Without these three, bhakti, bhakta, bhakti, and Bhagavan, there is no meaning to the word bhakti. Kardama Muni fixed his mind on the Supreme Brahman and realized him through bhakti, or devotional service. This indicates that he fixed his mind on the personal feature of the Lord, because bhakti cannot be executed unless one has realization of the personal feature of the Absolute Truth. Gunavabhase, Gunavabhase. He is beyond the three modes of material nature, but it is due to him that the three modes of material nature are manifested. In other words, although the material energy is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, he is not affected, as we are, by the modes of material nature. We are conditioned souls, but he is not affected, although the material nature has emanated from him. He is the supreme living entity, and is never affected by Maya. But we are subordinate, minute living entities, prone to be affected by the limitations of Maya. If he is in constant contact with the Supreme Lord by devotional service, the conditioned living entity also becomes freed from the infection of Maya. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Sagunan Samatityayitan, Bhagavad Gita 14:26. A person engaged in Krishna consciousness is at once liberated from the influence of the three modes of material nature. In other words, once the conditioned soul engages himself in devotional service, he also becomes liberated like the Lord. Text 44. Thus he gradually becomes unaffected by the false ego of material identity and becomes free from material affection. Undisturbed, equal to everyone, and without duality, he could indeed see himself also. His mind was turned inward and was perfectly calm, like an ocean, unagitated by waves. Purport. When one's mind is in full Krishna consciousness, and one fully engages in rendering devotional service to the Lord, he becomes just like an ocean, unagitated by waves. This very example is also cited in Bhagavad Gita. One should become like the ocean. The ocean is filled by many thousands of rivers, and millions of tons of its water evaporates into clouds. Yet the ocean is the same unagitated ocean. The laws of nature may work, but if one is fixed in devotional service at the lotus feet of the Lord, he is not agitated, for he is introspective. He does not look outside to material nature, but he looks in to the spiritual nature of his existence. With his sober mind, he simply engages in the service of the Lord. Thus he realizes his own self without false identification with matter and without affection for material possessions. Such a great devotee is never in trouble with others because he sees everyone from the platform of spiritual understanding. he sees himself and others in the right perspective. Text 45. He thus becomes liberated from conditioned life he thus became liberated from conditioned life and became self-situated in transcendental devotional service to the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, the omniscient super soul within everyone. Purport. When one engages in the transcendental devotional service of the Lord, one becomes aware that his constitutional position as an individual soul is to be eternally servitor of the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva. Self-realization does not mean that because the Supreme Lord and the individual soul are both souls, they are equal in every respect. The individual soul is prone to be conditioned, and the Supreme Soul is never conditioned. When the conditioned soul realizes that he is subordinate to the Supreme Soul, his position is called Labdhatma, self-realization, or Mukta Bandhana, freedom from material contamination. Material contamination continues as long as one thinks that he is as good as the Supreme Lord or is equal with him. This condition is the last snare of Maya. Maya always influences the conditioned soul. Even after much meditation and speculation, if one continues to think himself one with the Supreme Lord, it is to be understood that he is still in the last snares of the spell of Maya. The word parena is very significant. Para means transcendental, untinged by material contamination. Full consciousness that one is an eternal servant of the Lord is called para-bhakti. If one has any identification with material things and executes devotional service for attainment of some material gain, that is vida bhakti, or contaminated bhakti. One can actually become liberated by execution of para-bhakti. Another word mentioned here is sarvagya. The supersoul seated within the heart, the supersoul sitting within the heart is all cognizant. He knows. I may forget my past activities due to the change of body, but because the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is sitting within me, he knows everything. Therefore, the result of my past karma or past activities is awarded to me. I may forget, but he awards me suffering or enjoyment for the misdeeds or good deeds of my past life. One should not think that he is freed from reaction because he has forgotten the actions of his past life. Reactions will take place, and what kind of reaction there will be is judged by the Supersoul, the witness. Text 46. He began to see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is seated in everyone's heart, and that everyone is existing on him, because he is the Supersoul of everyone. Purport. That everyone is existing on the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not mean that everyone is also Godhead. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Everything is resting on him, the Supreme Lord, but that does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also everywhere. This mysterious position has to be understood by highly advanced devotees. There are three kinds of devotees: the neophyte devotee, the intermediate devotee, and the advanced devotee. The neophyte devotee does not understand the techniques of devotional science, but simply offers devotional service to the deity in the temple. The intermediate devotee understands who God is, who is a devotee, who is a non-devotee, and who is innocent, and he deals with such persons differently. But a person who sees that the Lord is sitting as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and that everything is depending on or existing on the transcendental energy of the Supreme Lord, is in the highest devotional position. Text 47. freed from all hatred and desire, Kardama Muni, being equal to everyone because of discharging uncontaminated devotional service, ultimately attained the path back to Godhead. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, only by devotional service one can understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord, and after understanding Him perfectly, in His transcendental position, enter into the kingdom of God. The process of entering into the kingdom of God is Tripada Bhuti Gati. Tripada Bhuti Gati, or the path of the path back home, back to Godhead, by which one can attain the ultimate goal of life. Kardama Muni, by his perfect devotional knowledge and service, achieved this ultimate goal, which is known as Bhagavati Gati. Thus, end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 24th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Renunciation of Kardama Muni. Jai. Kardama Muni ki jai. Shri Kapila Dev ki jai. Or Premanandi Hari Hari Wo. Okay, now we are going to enter one of the most, when I first read the Bhagavatam, this section of the Bhagavatam was most fascinating to me. The teachings of Kapila Dev to Devahuti. And then I realized also that all the statements about the women being less intelligent, they were actually mainly about materialistic women. Because Devahuti questions and the way she understood this philosophy is not possible that she's less intelligent. So devotee women are not less intelligent. Okay. Still, they don't give up their feminine natures, which is different. All right, here we go. Chapter 25, The Glories of Devotional Service. This is a wonderful chapter. Text 1. Sri Shaunaka said, although he is unborn, the Supreme Personality of Godhead took birth as Kapila Muni by his internal potency. He descended to disseminate transcendental knowledge for the benefit of the whole human race. Purport. And of course these purports are contained in the teachings of Lord Kapila, the son of Devahuti. The word Atma, Pragyaptaye, indicates that the Lord descends for the benefit of the human race to give transcendental knowledge. Material necessities are quite sufficiently provided for in the Vedic knowledge, which offers a program for good living conditions and gradual elevation to the platform of goodness. In the mode of goodness, one's knowledge expands. On the platform of passion, there is no knowledge, for passion is simply an impetus to enjoy material benefits. On the platform of ignorance, there is no knowledge and no enjoyment, but simply life almost like that of animals. The Vedas are meant to elevate one from the mode of ignorance to the platform of goodness. When one is situated in the mode of goodness, he is able to understand knowledge of the self, or transcendental knowledge. This knowledge cannot be appreciated by any ordinary man. Therefore, since a disciplic succession is required, this knowledge is expounded either by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself or by his bona fide devotee. Shaunaka Muni also states here that Kapila, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, took birth or appeared simply to appreciate and disseminate transcendental knowledge. Simply to understand that one is not matter but spirit soul, aham brahmasmi, I am by nature Brahman, is not sufficient knowledge for understanding the self and its activities. One must be situated in the activities of Brahman. Knowledge of those activities is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Such transcendental knowledge can be appreciated in human society, but not in animal society, as clearly indicated here by the word Nrinam, for the human beings. Human beings are meant for regulated life. By nature, there is regulation in animal life also, but that is not like the regulated life as described in the scriptures or by the authorities. Human life is regulated life, not animal life. In regulated life only can one understand transcendental knowledge. Text 2. Shonaka continued, "There is no one who knows more than the Lord Himself, no one is more worshipable or more mature a yogi than He. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about Him always is the actual pleasure of the senses." Purport. In Bhagavad Gita it is stated that no one can be equal to or greater than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Vedas also. Eko bahunam yo vididati kaman. He is the supreme living entity and is supplying the necessities of all other living entities. Thus, all other living entities, both Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, are subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The same concept is confirmed here. Na yasya varshmanat pumsam. Amongst the living entities, no one can surpass the Supreme Person because no one is richer, more famous, stronger, more beautiful, wiser, or more renounced than He. These qualifications make Him the Supreme Godhead, the cause of all causes. Yogis are very proud of performing wonderful feats, but no one can compare to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is associated with the Supreme Lord is accepted as a first-class yogi. Devotees may not be as powerful as the Supreme Lord, but by constant association with the Lord, they become as good as the Lord Himself. Sometimes the devotees act more powerfully than the Lord. Of course, that is the Lord's concession. Also used here is the word varimna, meaning the most worshipful of all yogis. To hear from Krishna is the real pleasure of the senses. Therefore, He is known as Govinda, for by His words, by His teachings, by His instruction, by everything connected with Him, He enlivens the senses. Whatever He instructs is from the transcendental platform, and His instructions, being absolute, are non-different from Him. Hearing from Krishna, or His expansion, or plenary expansion like Kapila, is very pleasing to the senses. Bhagavad Gita can be read or heard many times, but because it gives great pleasure, the more one reads Bhagavad Gita, the more he gets the appetite to read and understand it. And each time he gets new enlightenment. That is the nature of the transcendental message. Similarly, we find that transcendental happiness, that transcendental happiness in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The more we hear and chant the glories of the Lord, the more we become happy. Text 3. Therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the Personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by His internal potency. Purport. The word anukirtaya is very significant. Anukirtaya means to follow the description, not to create a concocted mental description, but to follow. Shaunaka Rishi requested Sutta Goswami to describe what he had actually heard from his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami, about the transcendental pastimes the Lord manifested by his internal energy. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has no material body, but he can assume any kind of body by his supreme will. That is made possible by his internal energy. Text 4. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the most powerful sage Maitreya was a friend of Vyasadeva. Being encouraged and pleased by Vidura's inquiry about transcendental knowledge, Maitreya spoke as follows. Purport. Questions and answers are very satisfactorily dealt with when the inquirer is bona fide and the speaker is also authorized. Here Maitreya is considered a powerful sage, and therefore he is also described as Bhagavan. This word can be used not only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but for anyone who is almost as powerful as the Supreme Lord. Maitreya is addressed as Bhagavan because he was spiritually far advanced. He was a personal friend of Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, a literary incarnation of the Lord. Maitreya was very pleased by the inquiries of Vidura because they were the inquiries of a bona fide, advanced devotee. Thus Maitreya was encouraged to answer. When there are discourses on transcendental topics between devotees of equal mentality, the questions and answers are very fruitful and encouraging. Text 5. Maitreya said, when Kardama left for the forest, Lord Kapila stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovara to please his mother, Devahuti. Purport. In the absence of the father, it is the duty of the grown son to take charge of his mother and to serve her to the best of his ability so that she will not feel separation from her husband. And it is the duty of the husband to leave home as soon as there is a grown son to take charge of his wife and family affairs. That is the Vedic system of household life. One should not remain continually implicated in household life, household affairs, up to the time of death. He must leave. Family affairs and the wife may be taken charge of by a grown son. Text 6. When Kapila, who could show her the ultimate goal of the absolute truth, was sitting leisurely before her, Devahuti remembered the words Brahma had spoken to her, and therefore began to question Kapila as follows. Text 7. Devahuti said, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Purport. Here the word asad indriya tarshanat is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asat indriya tarshanat means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. We are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence. Sometimes as a human being, or sometimes as a human body, sometimes, I'll read this again. We are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body, and therefore the engagements of our material senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses, being contaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional service therefore involves freeing the senses from this contamination. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Shad Indriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sense activities are called sense gratification. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing the instructions of Lord Kapila. These are classic purports. Classic. Text 8. Your Lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental eye, by which by your mercy only I have attained after many, many births. I'll read that again. Your Lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental eye, by which, by your mercy only, I have attained after many, many births. Purport. This verse is very instructive, since it indicates the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple. The disciple or conditioned soul is put into this darkest region of ignorance, and therefore is entangled in the material existence of sense gratification. It is very difficult to get out of this entanglement and attain freedom. But if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a spiritual master like Kapila Muni or his representative, then by his grace one can be delivered from the mire of ignorance. The spiritual master is therefore worshipped as one who delivers the disciple from the mire of ignorance with the light of the torch of knowledge. The word paragam is very significant. Paragam refers to one who can take the disciple to the other side. This side is conditioned life. The other side is a life of freedom. The spiritual master takes the disciple to the other side by opening his eyes with knowledge. We are suffering simply because of ignorance. By the instruction of the spiritual master, the darkness of ignorance is removed, and thus the disciple is enabled to go to the side of freedom. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that after many, many births, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, if after many, many births, one is able to find a bona fide spiritual master and surrender to such a bona fide representative of Krishna, one can be taken to the side of light. Text 9. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin and Supreme Lord of all living entities. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of the ignorance of the universe. Purport. Kapila Muni is accepted as an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Here the word Adya means the origin of all living entities, and Pungsang Ishvara means the Lord, Ishvara, of the living entities. Ishvara Parama, Krishna. Kapila Muni is the direct expansion of Krishna, who is the sun of spiritual knowledge. As the sun dissipates the darkness of the universe, so when the light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down, it at once dissipates the darkness of Maya. We have our eyes, but without the light of the sun, our eyes are of no value. Similarly, without the light of the Supreme Lord, or without the divine grace of the spiritual master, one cannot see things as they are. Text 10. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. Due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya and have identified myself with the body and consequent bodily relations. Purport. The false ego of identifying one's body as oneself and of claiming things possessed in relationship with this body is called Maya. In the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, the Lord says, I am sitting in everyone's heart, and from me come everyone's remembrance and forgetfulness. Devahuti has stated that false identification of the body with the self and attachment for possessions in relation to the body are also under the direction of the Lord. Does this mean that the Lord discriminates? Does this mean that the Lord discriminates by engaging one in his devotional service and another in sense gratification? If that were true, it would be an incongruity on the part of the Supreme Lord. But that is not the actual fact. As soon as the living entity forgets his real constitutional position of eternal servitorship to the Lord and wants instead to enjoy himself by sense gratification, he is captured by Maya. This capture by Maya is the consciousness of false identification with the body and attachment for the possessions of the body. These are the activities of Maya, and since Maya is also an agent of the Lord, it is indirectly the action of the Lord. The Lord is merciful. If anyone wants to forget him and enjoy this material world, he gives him full facility, not directly through the agency, but through the agency of his material potency. Therefore, since the material potency is the Lord's energy, indirectly it is the Lord who gives the facility to forget him. Devahuti therefore said, my engagement in sense gratification was also due to you. Now kindly get me free from this entanglement. Hare Krishna. By the grace of the Lord, one is allowed to enjoy this material world. But when one is disgusted with material enjoyment and is frustrated, and when one sincerely surrenders under the lotus feet of the Lord, then the Lord is so kind that he frees one from entanglement. Krishna says, therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, first of all surrender, and then I will take charge of you and free you from all reactions of sinful activities. Sinful activities are those activities performed in forgetfulness of our relationship with the Lord. In this material world, activities for material enjoyment which are considered to be pious are also sinful. For example, one sometimes gives something in charity to a needy person with the view to getting back the money 4 times increased. Giving with the purpose of gaining something is called charity in the mode of passion. Everything done here is done in the modes of material nature, and therefore all activities but service to the Lord are sinful. Because of sinful activities, we become attracted by the illusion of material attachment. And we think, I am this body. I think of the body as myself and of bodily possessions as mine. Devahuti requested Lord Kapila to free her from that entanglement of false identification and false possession. Text 11. Devahuti continued, I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists, and I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman and between matter and spirit. What a question. Huh? Purport. Sankhya philosophy, as is well known, see, now we're realizing that although Devahuti and Kardama Muni, they spent all this time in this aerial mansion enjoying sense gratification for years and thousands of years, they were not ordinary persons. So we can't judge a person just by that activity.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing the real consciousness. You know, he's traveling around the world, enlightening people whoever he meets, and she's inquiring with the most deep questions possible for a person, man or woman, to ask directly from the Supreme Personality of God, and who happens to be your son. These are not ordinary people.
Yeah.
Sankhya philosophy, as is well known, deals with Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or anyone who imitates the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an enjoyer. And Prakriti means nature. In this material world, material nature is being exploited by the Purushas, or the living entities. The intricacies in the material world of the relationship between the Prakriti and Purusha, or the enjoyed and the enjoyer, is called samsara, or material entanglement. Devahuti wanted to cut the tree of material entanglement, and she found the suitable weapon in Kapila Muni. The tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an ashwatha tree, whose root is upwards and whose branches are downwards. It is recommended here that one has to cut the root of this material existential tree with the axe of detachment. What is attachment? We'll read that again. It is recommended there that one has to cut the root of this material existential tree with the axe of detachment. What is attachment? The attachment involves Prakriti and Purusha. The living entities are trying to lord it over material nature. Since the conditioned soul takes material nature to be the object of his enjoyment, he takes the position of the enjoyer. He is therefore called Purusha. Devahuti questioned Kapila Muni, for she knew that only he could cut her attachment to this material world. The living entities in the guises of men and women are trying to enjoy the material energy. Therefore, in one sense, everyone is Purusha, because Purusha means enjoyer, and Prakriti means enjoyed. In this material world, both the so-called man and so-called woman are imitating the real Purusha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the enjoyer in the transcendental sense, whereas all others are Prakriti. The living entities are considered Prakriti. In Bhagavad Gita, matter is analyzed as apara, or inferior nature, whereas beyond this inferior nature, there is another superior nature, the living entities. Living entities are also Prakriti, or enjoyed, but under the spell of Maya, the living entities are falsely trying to take the position of enjoyers. That is the cause of samsara bandha, or conditional life. Devahuti wanted to get out of conditional life and place herself in full surrender. The Lord is Sharanyam, which means the only worthy personality to whom one can fully surrender. Because he is full of all opulences, if anyone actually wants relief, the best course is to surrender under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is also described here as Saddharma Vidam, Varishtam. This indicates that of all transcendental occupations, the best occupation is eternal loving service under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharma is sometimes translated as religion, but that is not exactly the meaning. Dharma actually means that which one cannot give up, that which is inseparable from oneself. The warmth of fire is inseparable from fire. Therefore, warmth is called the Dharma, or nature of fire. Similarly, Saddharma means eternal occupation. That eternal occupation is engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The purpose of Kapila Dev's Sankhya philosophy is to propagate pure, uncontaminated devotional service, and therefore he is addressed here as the most important personality amongst those who know the transcendental occupation of a living entity. Stunning. Text 12. I think we'll stop here. We can hear some reflections. Anybody who wants to reflect on these profound purports or ask questions? Yes, Mr. Matt first. That's almost an hour already. How fast did that go?
Flew by.
What? Hello. You've only been here for 10 minutes. 5 minutes.
Rati Manjari
Hey Rati, Hare Krishna.
has a question. She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Very beautiful verses today. I have a question. In the beginning of the reading was mention of different levels of devotional service. My question is, how important do you consider it for an aspiring devotee, like me, to be focused on one's level of advancement? Should we regularly engage in self-reflection and risk to get discouraged by the countless faults we find, or to become too self-absorbed and even more distracted from Krishna than we already are? Should we actively take stock of our faults and repent, like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur shows in his Saranagati songs, so we can deepen our humility? Sharanagati songs, pardon. So we can deepen our humility, or should we think of ourselves less and simply focus on Krishna, hearing, chanting, and serving, or a combination of the above? What do you recommend?
Thank you for that wonderful question. There's real humility and there's false humility. Real humility comes naturally without being forced as one advances in Krishna consciousness. So it's not that we shouldn't be aware of where we are on the path of devotional service. We should be. But if we become overly absorbed in our own faults, then we become unbalanced and discouraged. Srila Prabhupada always told us that we should never become discouraged, because even in the very beginning stages of devotional service, Krishna appreciates, takes care of us, and encourages us from within. Then if we do something wrong, as a loving father, he disciplines us. He's taking care of us all the time. From the time that you take up devotional service sincerely, from the first moment you surrendered yourself to Krishna, even if it wasn't 100% completely pure or complete, just the tendency to do that, just the attempt to do that, endears one to Krishna. And therefore, even though one still has to tolerate one's the reactions to one's misdeeds in this material world, and who has not done misdeeds in this material world, one tolerates and continues to do devotional service. So if one is becoming unbalanced by becoming too much absorbed in the contemplation of one's faults, to the point where one cannot serve, one does not feel like chanting, one does not feel like doing devotional service, then one has to give up that absorption and run to Krishna and take shelter of Krishna. And at that time, at that moment, Krishna is most accessible. So this is the process of devotional service. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes the process of mixed devotional service or neophyte devotional service. There are 4 kinds of devotees who approach Krishna. They're in distress, they're in need of money, they're inquisitive, or they're actually searching for the truth. And Krishna says, Udarak sarva evaite, jnani tvatmaiva me matam, astitat sahiyuktadma mameva nutamam gatim. He says, Udarak sarva evaite. All of these persons are magnanimous souls. Anyone who consciously approaches Krishna for whatever reason is a magnanimous soul. But of those, one who actually knows something about Krishna and is approaching Krishna to want to know about Krishna, and therefore whose devotional service is more consciously done, in other words, those who are jnani or searching for the truth, Krishna is very dear to that person, and the person is very dear to Krishna. So, the verse also that comes to mind is Tat te nukam pam sushamik shamana in the prayers to Lord Brahma after Lord Brahma becomes embarrassed by Krishna and realizes what his relationship is with Krishna after he forgot due to pride and due to his inability to understand how a little boy who's taking food from the plate of his friends can be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he wonders, and he tries to test him, played a trick on him. With his mystic power, he stole the cowherd boys and the cows and calves, and then Krishna, of course, expanded. We know the story. He expanded himself into all the forms of all the calves and all the boys, and for 1 year went into the village and had all the relationships with all those personalities perfectly. They could not recognize that he was Krishna because all of the boys were exact duplicates, but it was Krishna. And the calves were the exact duplicates, but they were Krishna. And so so that's Brahma. That's who Brahma is. So he's offering prayers and he's saying, Tate nukampam susamikshimana. If one is keeping himself alive, having become an heir to a fortune, he becomes eligible for the fortune. So just like that, a devotee who is sincere, and this is Sridhar Swami's commentary on that verse. You can read about it in the Bhagavatam. It's a good verse to read and purport to study again and again. Very deep, very well written also. Sridhar Swami comments on this verse that once one surrenders sincerely to Krishna, then Krishna takes care of that devotee from that point on. But in a neophyte condition, the devotee may have some remnants of the desire to enjoy the material energy. So Krishna, he thinks, this person's less intelligent, but I'm not less intelligent, so I will let him or her perform this activity and then give some mercy which appears to be a sinful reaction. And then the devotee has to tolerate that reaction. But that reaction is not karma. This is the difference. Once you understand this, then you can more easily tolerate the things that the reactions of things that you've done before. And just continue to serve Krishna. And Krishna, he appreciates that. It's like Krishna is personally administering medicine. We have a doctor in the house here. She's relating to this. She's going humming and hawing over here. Therefore, once that medicine has been digested and one becomes healthy again, then one welcomes the devotee with open arms. Hare Krishna. That's the situation. That is the position, as Prabhupada would say. That is the position. Yes.
Indranuja Das says, Indranuja?
Indranuja. Hey, Indranuja, Hare Krishna.
Says, I forgot where I read it recently, but I heard the statement, humility is born of association with devotees. And Rati Manjari says, thank you for your thorough answer as well.
Yes, what you said is true, but it is developed in association with devotees proportionally to their humility. In other words, when you associate with Vaishnavas, you must discriminate, and this is also, I guess, a part of Rati's answer also. We respect all devotees. This is Rupa Goswami's teachings in his Upadeshamrita, Nectar of Instruction, titled by Srila Prabhupada's translation, The Nectar of Instruction. And he describes how and this goes back to the same question of Rati Manjari, that there's different, and the purport that we just read, that there's neophytes, there's intermediate devotees and advanced devotees. So we respect all devotees within our hearts. But if a devotee is not completely pure, or if there's some incompatibility, or if there's some material contamination that we will fall prey to by associating with this person, if the person is a mixed devotee and therefore is contaminated with passion or ignorance, then we may not seek out that devotee's association. If we are, therefore the tendency for devotees to congregate together in terms of their spiritual attainment is also natural. So one devotee may be more advanced than another devotee. So the medium devotee can discriminate between the Lord and the Lord's devotee, and the innocent person, and a person who is a non-devotee or an atheist or a demon. And it mentions in one of the purports that we just read, the devotee will deal differently with each of those persons, and Prabhupada didn't elaborate in the purport, but the elaboration that he gives in other places in his purports is that devotee loves Krishna, but if you love Krishna and worship the deity of Krishna, but don't see Krishna in the hearts of others, as we just read about Kardama Muni, he wandered around and he was in the most advanced stage, and he saw Krishna in the heart of everyone. So he didn't become a preacher, in a sense, because he was seeing everyone as the abode of Krishna. So, if one is advanced and sees Krishna in the heart of the devotees, and therefore offer respects to the devotees, and even then has friendships with equals, and gives service to superiors, and shows compassion to inferiors, then he raises himself by this process. And when he sees innocent people, he naturally tries to help them. And when he sees a person who's an atheist, or an offender, or a person who is antagonist to devotees and to Krishna, then he avoids those persons. He doesn't go and try to associate with them. And similarly, if a devotee is as I said before, if a devotee is materialistically contaminated, he won't go and try to search out that devotee and associate. He'll respect that person from inside the heart, but he won't necessarily respect a demoniac person, within the heart, because Krishna isn't manifesting to that person, even though he's there. And we do give respect to everyone, even the demons, in a certain way, but we don't associate with them. We don't search them out, definitely. So these are the different discriminations. As we advance in Krishna consciousness, we become more precise, more discriminate in our behavior, in our interactions with others, and gradually we come to the point of, because you have to be in the second class form to be a preacher, but this doesn't mean that if an Uttamadhikari who is powered, Uttamadhikari is one who can turn other devotees into other people into devotees in a very meaningful way, and the most advanced Uttamadhikari is one whose presence causes one to want to chant Hare Krishna, or to feel more Krishna conscious, more God conscious. Anyway, there's so many examples of these things in the scriptures. Prahlad Maharaj found the Python devotee, who liberated soul, who was just laying there, and Prahlad Maharaj didn't criticize him from laying there in his own filth, but he said, "I noticed that you're very intelligent," because he could see, because he was advanced, and he could see he was an Uttamadhikari. And then, of course, when he spoke, then it was wonderful, just like we read in the purport. When a fool doesn't speak, by some trick of spiritual imitation, to take a vow of Mona and not speak, and think, so that everybody will think that he's very advanced. As soon as he opens his mouth, then a real devotee will know exactly where he is. You see? So I hope that answers the question, maybe touches on some of the points. It's not that you become a devotee a pure devotee by approaching and associating with anyone or any devotee. It depends on the level of that person's consciousness and the level of the consciousness you're trying to associate with. There's ways to associate with advanced devotees, and if you're not capable or willing to follow the laws of nature, the spiritual laws of nature given by Krishna, and when we're associating with advanced devotees, then we either make a big offense or we do something wrong and give the wrong impression or get the wrong idea or misinterpret or whatever. Therefore, we have to be careful. When we're around advanced devotees, we have to be careful. That's also described by the Rupa Goswami and that Upashamrita, how we have to not see an advanced devotee in terms of the bodily concept, whether he's ill or whether he's not, physically attractive or whatever. Advanced spiritual consciousness doesn't depend on those things. It's not external at all. Okay? Hare Krishna.
You have some comments? You should buy me one.
Yes, please.
Shri Devi Dasi says, I agree totally with the past comment. Associating with Rati Manjari has made me more humble. I meant to tell her this, so here it is, Maharaj. She's humbled by your association, and I'm humbled by her association. I realize how puffed up I have been, while so ignorant, really. And then,
my comment is, first of all, thanks for the encouragement, and second of all, congratulations. Hare Krishna.
And Bhakta Corey Singleton, I believe from Houston actually, says, I see Krishna in all things, but I still watch the company I keep.
Well, very good. Keep it up. Keep reading Prabhupada's books, and that sensation will grow, and it will become fixed and all-pervasive in your consciousness, and then you can go back to Godhead. But you have to approach Krishna, because real humility comes the closer we come to Krishna. When we come closer to Krishna, we realize how much greater Krishna is than us. We realize our real position in relationship to Krishna. Then we become truly humble. But true humility doesn't mean we sit over in a corner and just feel, insignificant and, incapable. That kind of touches the first question also we got about how to balance, the introspection. So Sanatana Goswami in his Briya Bhagavatamrita describes that, and it's actually Narada Muni speaking to Gopakumar, that real dainya means when one feels oneself very insignificant, and the end of dainya, or the utter humility, the highest or the deepest form of humility, is when one sees that everyone else is a devotee except for him or her. And in that consciousness, one can do wonderful things. It's not that one just sits over in a corner and, acts like one's poor and incapable and fallen, and therefore he can't do anything. That's called false humility. But that person with real humility will do something extraordinarily wonderful. That's the real test of humility. Hare Krishna. Thanks, Corey.
Rati's got another comment. Rati says, you read a while ago that we have to approach an advanced devotee cautiously, like when one is approaching fire.
Yeah, that's true. It's true, but that doesn't mean we don't approach. You know, like when you approach fire, a really hot fire, like these firemen, they have these special suits they wear, otherwise they'll be burned to a crisp. So, I mean, that means you have to be prepared. If you want to get close to the fire, then you have to actually have a body of fire. So, if you want to become, purified, you get close to the fire, but you have to be careful, because if you don't have that cloak of humility on, then you may get discouraged when you're with a person who's in the fire, full fire of Krishna consciousness. But actually, we're so lucky we have Srila Prabhupada, because anyone who reads his books and has been with him personally knows that even though he was heavy, Guru means heavy, the fire of Krishna consciousness is hot, but at the same time, it's a pleasant hot. And if we don't, if we are careful and follow the instructions and try to apply the lessons and the reactions and all these things, then we'll become, equipped, so that we won't burn up in the fire, that we will become cooled by the fire. So tomorrow morning, we're going to meet again, tomorrow evening, but we're going to be in Delhi, the house of Anantarupa and Yamuna Pavani. And we look forward to seeing you there. But we're going to leave tomorrow morning, and we still have quite a bit to do to pack and prepare ourselves. So we're going to stop here and thank all of you for it was a special reflection session tonight. I'm very, very impressed with the comments and the questions and the responses to the answer. Matter of fact, I'm kind of surprised at my answers, actually. I'm being empowered by all of you to remember some things that I read, that I've heard from Prabhupada, experienced, Krishna consciousness. So anyway, thank you very much. We owe it to Devahuti and Kapila Dev and Kardama Muni. Hare Krishna. All glories to all those great souls, all glories to all the souls who are becoming attached to them and attached to hearing the Bhagavatam. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. See you all tomorrow night in Delhi. Hare Krishna.